Lesson plan redo for literacy methods class. This is not a cookie cutter assignment or activity. You can't just say, well, here are the steps and plug it into a template. You'll have to understand the principles and apply them. So make sure you are continually reading and viewing, reviewing, rereading the assigned reading and the mini lectures. You need to understand lesson planning, the principles of effective skills instruction, word identification strategies, study skill strategies, and cognitive processes related to comprehension. First of all, the lesson plan. You are planning the entire learning episode. That's what a lesson plan is. Just as if you are going to teach it tomorrow. This is not an abstraction. This is a real life lesson plan. The rule of thumb is you should be able to hand it to a substitute teacher. They should be able to look at it and replicate exactly what you are going to do. That means you have to include all the material you are going to use. Books, assignments, worksheets, reading materials, page numbers. Exactly. That's what a lesson plan is. Examples and modeling must be there. You have to include what you will say during your models, exactly what your example is, and you have to be specific. You cannot simply say, find the main idea here. Oh, no. Find the main idea, and then you must write in your lesson plan what the main idea is. Be specific. And please, no stinking automatic numbering or outlining. I'll show you how to undo this. But that disrupts the margin, makes it harder for you to see and for me to respond. That means also numbers and or letters, not dashes and dats. Outline or list means numbers and or letters. All right, so that's the lesson plan. The elements of effective skills instruction starts with a purpose statement. The purpose of this lesson is, insert what you're teaching there. Everything that follows must support that. The input is the information that students need to know. What you will say. Now, I'm using a Word document here and not my usual PowerPoint because I want to model what your lesson plan input should look like. Just like you see here on the screen. This is input. What I am telling you, what you need to know, what I am going to say, that is input, and that's what it looks like. That is what list or outline form looks like. Numbers, letters, yes, indentation. You have to have modeling in the elements of effective skills instruction. I've told you what it is. I've told you the steps. Now watch me as I do it. So this means that you do it. You show them. You are thinking out loud. And when you are thinking out loud, in your lesson plan, you write down exactly what you are going to say. All right? Include examples and exactly what you are going to say in your modeling. All right? Scripted, but using outline or list form. All right? That is an important part of the input. The next section, and I should see a section here labeled guided practice. This is practice with a scaffold or a structure so that you can practice it together with a gradual release of responsibility. That means the initial ones, a lot of teacher, a little student, and as you continue on, have a couple practice episodes, it's less teacher, more student. At least 3 practice examples. And the rule of thumb is that students will be able to complete the independent practice independently. That is why it's called independent practice. So think of an upside down triangle. At the top, a lot of teacher. At the bottom, less teacher, so that they can do that independent practice independently. All right. This enables you to do some informal formative assessment, but that's not the goal here. The goal is to provide them practice with guided, with gradual release of responsibility. Now, independent practice, 2 things. It's not assessment. It is practice. Now, practice of what they have already learned. Practice does not mean a single episode. It means you need to practice. That's why it's called practice. You are practicing what you have learned. So it can't simply be a simple 5-second episode. There it is. So it is practice. And not a single 5-second response. You're practicing, repeating it over and over to reinforce learning. Now, the purpose is not to assess, although you can often do this. This is why I do not like to include assessment in a skills lesson plan for 2 reasons. First, not every teaching episode is assessed. And secondly, for beginning lesson planners, assessment often gets confused with independent practice. In your mind, some students say, okay, they did it once, they can do it. That's assessment / independent practice. No, independent practice is practice. Practice, doing it over and over, reinforcing. You will assess another day, but purpose of independent practice is to practice independently. Have I said that enough times? I think I have. All right, the third part is to understand what a word identification strategy is. Different than a word recognition. Word recognition is automatically knowing what a word is, recognizing it. Identification is a strategy for figuring out unrecognized words. And again, you need to understand the principles here. Not all the information that you need here is found in the book, meaning that not all the steps you can simply, oh, here's the steps and apply it into a template. You have to understand the principles. All the principles are there. Understanding the principles are there. The principal ideas, the principal elements, you need to then adopt and adapt and apply them. This is just like real life. Real life is not a template. When you get out there in the classroom, you have to understand these principles and be able to use them in a variety of settings and situations. That's called transferring knowledge from here to there. There are 2 strategies from which to choose: word parts and morphemic analysis. And again, these are not skills, but word identification strategies. You are teaching students how to consciously employ one of these strategies to identify unknown word parts, all right? So you're going to have to adopt or adapt. Find some steps. There are some, here are the steps. This is how you do it. At the end of your lesson, students should be able to see an unknown word in print and use the strategy to identify it. All right? So one of those 2. The second one is a study skill strategy for use with expository text. You're teaching the specific steps. Input, modeling, guided practice. For guided practice, you're going to have to figure out how to do this, and that's going to take some thinking on your part. How can you provide, not your, guided practice? How can you create the structure with a gradual release of responsibilities? And again, there is not a template that you can simply cut and paste. You're going to have to understand the principles and able to design, just like a real life teacher, design a learning episode so that you can teach this study skill strategy. Independent practice, and again, it's practice of what you teach them. It's not assessment, but practice. You do it many times to reinforce. And again, how can you create the structure? How can you create the practice? And you have skills, 5 of them, from which to choose. At the end of the lesson, students should be able to use one of these study skills to comprehend expository text. And then cognitive processes related to comprehension. This is a cognitive process related to comprehending narrative text. It assumes steps. So you're going to say, these are the steps. This is how you do it. That's part of your input, and then you're going to model it as well. This means comprehension related to narrative text, that it needs to be found within the context of a narrative text or a story. I gave you many from which to choose. You can identify 1 or more, but you have to identify specific ones. Here's the story, here's the paragraph, this is what I'll say. Model it using a story. You can predict, compare and contrast, cause it. You'll have to model one of these. Now, as I said, use a graphic organizer. It's used to organize thinking. Use it as a teaching device so you see it, and if you're using it, you have to say this will be on a board, this will be on a screen, this will be on a poster. Students will have a sheet of paper in front of them. You need to let the reader of your lesson plan know exactly. But use that graphic organizer, that predictograph, to teach it first. Watch me as I do it, and you're modeling, you're filling in the graphic organizer. Use it for guided practice, doing it together, filling it in together, and then using it for independent practice. So independent practice is practice, reinforcement of what they already know. Practice. And I've given you 4 cognitive processes from which to choose. You're teaching them how to use to predict a graph, infer a graph, etc. These are graphic organizers. All right, so you're going to teach them how to do it, but think in terms of I'm teaching them the cognitive process and I'm going to use that graphic organizer. All right, I'll give you time in class, but I want you to look at this before you get to class.